John, you have the floor.
Wolfgang, thank you very much. Frank, thank you for those important thoughts. Laurent, great to be here with you and with everybody. It's good to be back at the Munich Security Conference, especially this year when we mark the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II, which of course led to the start of the new transatlantic partnership and ultimately to a new world order. And a few years after the war, when the North Atlantic Treaty was ratified in the United States and our relationship was cemented, President Harry Truman remarked that the more closely that the nations of the Atlantic community can work together for peace, the better for all people everywhere. I think it is fair to say that the decades since then have proven that, have borne out that statement. And as our transatlantic relationship has grown both stronger and more expansive, so has democracy, so has prosperity, and so has stability in Europe and in the United States and around the globe. The reason for that is really simple. Unlike any other partnership in the world, and to some degree this speaks to what Frank was talking about a few minutes ago about Germany's increased role, our partnership is focused not just on regional challenges, but on global challenges. Today, for example, even as we concentrate on regional initiatives like improving our energy security and completing the hugely important transatlantic trade and investment partnership, we and our European partners are also leading, and I mean leading, the responses to global challenges like climate change and Ebola. But despite the fact that our transatlantic relationship today is as strong and as critical as ever, and I think any legitimate analysis of it will come to that conclusion, there is also no question that we are also in the midst of a defining moment for our partnership. We are facing multiple tests, and today I want to just focus quickly on two of them. One is taking center stage right here in Europe, and many people have spoken to it in the course of the weekend, and I'm not going to go into it in detail. Frank just talked about it. The other one has its roots beyond our borders. But both of them test international law, both test multilateral mechanisms, and both test the global world order that we have spent the last 70 years working hard to build and maintain. The first test is obviously Ukraine. And Vice President Biden outlined in detail, and I think eloquently yesterday, clearly, our commitment. So I'm not going to go back through all of it. Suffice it to say that today Russia is seeking to fundamentally alter the security landscape of Eastern and Central Europe, first through its illegal occupation of Crimea, and now through the brazen effort, the overt effort, the indisputable effort to destabilize eastern Ukraine. This challenge led me to Kiev, not for a first visit, but on Thursday, to meet with President Poroshenko, Prime Minister Yatsenyuk, Foreign Minister Klimkin, and it led Chancellor Merkel and President Hollande to visit Ukraine and then Moscow in pursuit of a plan to de-escalate the situation. Let me assure everybody, there is no division, there is no split. I keep hearing people trying to create one. We are united, we are working closely together. We all agree that this challenge will not end through military force. We are united in our diplomacy. But the longer that it takes, the more the off-ramps are avoided, the more we will be forced to raise the costs on Russia and its proxies. This much I can assure you. No matter what the United States, France, Germany, and our allies and partners, no matter what, we will stand together in support of Ukraine and in defense of the common understanding that international borders cannot be changed by force in Europe or anywhere else. The second major test facing the United States, Europe, and indeed the entire civilized world today is, of course, the rise of violent extremism. And if we needed more evidence, almost every single week brings new examples of how far the evil of these extremist groups reaches. Daesh's execution of a captured Jordanian pilot by burning him alive is a new level of depravity. And far from hiding such a despicable act, they posted a video of it for all the world to see. And last week, the UN reported the horrifying ways that Daesh treats even its most vulnerable captives, crucifying children, burying children alive, hand-picking mentally challenged children to serve as suicide bombers and kill even more innocent people. This is what we're up against. It's not just Daesh. I visited Pakistan last month, and soon after the extremists viciously attacked a military school, and Pakistani officials showed me the time-stamped photos of the sequence of the school's assembly hall before and after that December 16th assault. At first, there were children, as children would be lined up in their uniforms, sitting in their chairs in this auditorium, innocent faces, attentive, listening, watching, waiting for knowledge. Minutes later, the scene changed brutally and horribly from a learning center into a killing chamber. Blood everywhere, broken eyeglasses, scattered textbooks, torn jackets, young kids strewn across the floor, lifeless bodies. And on that day, the school's principal, having been escorted to safety, returned to try to save her students. And when challenged by the assassins, she pointed to the children, saying, "I am their mother," her last words. When they'd finished their slaughter in the auditorium, they telephoned on cell phones to call back for instructions. And the instructions that came through were about the soldiers who were closing in: kill them and then blow yourselves up. Let me be clear. There are no grounds of history, religion, ideology, psychology, politics, economic advantage or disadvantage, or personal ambition that justify the murder of children, the kidnapping and rape of teenage girls, or the slaughter of unarmed civilians. These atrocities can never be rationalized. They can never be excused. They must be opposed with every fiber of our being, and they must be stopped. Now, I need not remind this audience, perhaps of all the audiences in the world and of all the places in the world, that the 20th century was defined by the civilized world's struggle to develop the rule of law as the alternative to chaos, disorder, and dictatorship. And today we are witnessing nothing more than a form of criminal anarchy, a nihilism which illegitimately claims an ideological and religious foundation. And against this enemy, make no mistake, we are increasingly organizing and fighting back effectively, and we must. The world cannot and will not cower in the face of this extremism. And the United States and our European partners are helping to lead the fight to defeat it wherever it exists. And this is clear in the French-led fight against terrorists in the Sahel, which we appreciate enormously. It is clear in the support that Germany, France, and almost all of our European partners have shown for the fight against Boko Haram in Nigeria and elsewhere. And certainly it is clear in our shared mission to counter Daesh, a group that directly threatens the peace and stability of every single country in the region and has overtly threatened to take their horrific mission to every corner of the world. Today, the international coalition that we have built has grown to more than 60 active members, including dozens of allies and partners in Europe, all operating with a shared goal of disrupting, degrading, and destroying, ultimately destroying Daesh. Since September, our coalition has pursued a carefully crafted, comprehensive strategy to weaken Daesh on multiple fronts. We've launched some 2,000 airstrikes, retaken already 700 square kilometers of territory, 1/5 of the populated area that they had controlled. We have deprived the militants of the use of 200 oil and gas facilities that they were using to get their revenue. We've disrupted their command structure, undermined its propaganda, taken out half of their senior leadership, squeezed its financing, damaged its supply networks, dispersed its personnel, and forced them to think twice before they move in an open convoy. We are forcing them to change tactics. Take the events in Kobani. Daesh had captured more than 300 Kurdish villages along the border of Syria with Turkey, including large swaths of Kobani itself. But thanks to diplomatic cooperation among coalition partners, targeted airstrikes, and on-the-ground support from Iraqi Kurdish forces, together we drove Daesh out. They expected an easy victory, and the media was predicting an easy victory only a month or weeks away. Instead, after a costly battle in which they lost roughly 1,000 of their fighters, they were forced to openly acknowledge defeat. And as Daesh retreats to Syria, we will continue our fight. And we will continue to put pressure on the Assad regime, because there is no place for a brutal dictator who is a magnet for terrorism and allows those terrorists safe haven. But we also cannot lose sight, and this is an important part of my message here today. We cannot lose sight of the fact that this effort is only the beginning. We can't just work to put out the fires that Daesh and other groups are igniting in the region and around the world. We have to actually prevent the ignition of those fires in the first place. That means the fight against violent extremists is not going to be decided on the battlefield. It's going to be fought and won in classrooms, in workplaces, houses of worship, community centers, urban street corners, and halls of government. Countries need to adopt laws that crack down on terrorist recruitment. We have to address the intolerance, economic hopelessness, and exclusion in some of our societies. And we have to create alternatives to violent extremism in countries where it is prevalent. Alternatives that are as credible, as visible, as empowering, and as broadly available as we can make them. And if we don't take these steps, then you can absolutely bet that at this conference or another one like it, 5 years, 10 years from now, our successors will be on this same stage talking about this very same topic. The terror groups may have different acronyms by then, and they may be targeting different countries by then. But if we don't do what is required now, I can guarantee you that the fundamental challenge of today's conflict will remain. So we have to remain deeply committed to this fight, and those not yet committed need to commit to this fight. And we need to be unrelenting. This will be the focus of the International Summit on Countering Violent Extremism that President Obama is hosting in Washington in a week or two. I'll want to leave time for questions today, obviously, so I just make one final point. I think we all need to reflect on the claim that some have made in recent years, even here this weekend, that the entire international system is somehow unraveling. My own view is very different. In the course of my travels, I don't see an unraveling. I see the very opposite. I see nations working together to negotiate new and far-reaching trade pacts, which will contain about 70% of the GDP of the planet. I see us working together bring an end to the Ebola pandemic. I see a work to seek a peaceful resolution to the threat posed by Iran's nuclear program, and you just heard from Foreign Minister Zarif. I see us working together to reach an ambitious global compact on climate change, to curb the strife that taunts places like Central African Republic, Colombia, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Are the times challenging? Yes. Are they different? Yes. Of course. But I see countries around the world responding by reducing extreme poverty, by expanding access to primary education, by increasing life expectancies, by fighting back against HIV and AIDS. We're on the cusp of the first generation to be free from AIDS children in history. And we're improving maternal health care. We're expanding lifespans. We're aiding child nutrition. We're growing the middle class in country after country. I don't think so many countries have enjoyed the prosperity they enjoy today or are reaching for it at any time in human history. And while I've detailed the very real threat that violent extremism poses to us, please don't forget, we have faced far more daunting threats on this planet before, and we have prevailed. Statistics show that even with the increased acts of terror that we face today, a smaller percentage of people today are dying violent deaths than at any point in modern history. And one of the principal reasons we're achieving this progress is very simple. That we have never been content, any of us here in this Atlantic Alliance, to settle for the status quo. The transatlantic nations, all of us, are blessed to be the descendants of innovators, of doers, people who overcame slavery, plagues, global conflicts, depressions, fascism, total totalitarianism, the Holocaust. We are the inheritors of an activism, of a tradition that is utterly unafraid of great challenges, and in fact is most effective when we are put to the test. So now it is our turn. The tests that we face today compel us to prepare and plan to unite and to insist that our collective future will be uncompromised by the primitive and paranoid ideas of terrorists and thugs, but instead will be built by the universal values of decency and civility and knowledge and reason and rule of law. That is what we stand for together, and I am confident about the future. Thank you.